John Schuch é presidente atualmente do Lean Enterprise Institute, o LEI, que o Jim citou, né? E ele é também presidente da LGN, que foi citada, a Lean Global Network, que é a rede que congrega todos os nossos institutos. John Schuch, por favor.
Hello. Hello. Good morning. Bom dia, São Paulo. Hello over there. Good, you can, good. Thank you for waving. I know you're there and you're watching. So it's an honor to be here always in Brazil, in São Paulo, to participate in the Lean Institute Brazil Summit. I didn't count how many times I've been here, but it's many, and it's always an honor. It's also an honor to follow my friend Jim Morgan, who was just sharing his experience. I have to tell you, I've known Jim Morgan for 20 years, at least 19 years. We met at the University of Michigan, so I've been through this journey with him a little bit. And I also got to know that company, Ford, very well when I lived in the Detroit area. I worked with them myself. And when Jim took on the role that he described, we consulted a bit. And I believed at the time that Ford was a company that was probably impossible to change. I love the company. It's important, beautiful history, Henry Ford, but also I knew the culture of the company at that time. And I didn't think it would be able to change. I even owned some stock. So I it's not that I disliked the company. But I can tell you that the transformation has been remarkable, one of the most historically important transformations in history. The story has not been fully told yet. I think it will be. And I can tell you that what Jim shared with us today was the secret to the transformation. So Alan Mulally, the new CEO, came from Boeing and did some amazing things. But in terms of actual change, what he did was invest in product. And none of that would have worked if you didn't have people who could execute the innovations inside product development, and that's the team that Jim Morgan led. So without Jim doing that, the transformation we've seen at Ford would not have happened, I am convinced. So thanks for sharing that story, Jim. And it's an honor to join you afterward. And Flavio Piquet asked me to talk about innovation. That's fine. In a way, it's easy for me to talk about innovation because I think Lean is innovation, and it's at its very core. But let's think a minute about what innovation really means. Now, so how many people here know Steve Jobs? Oh, that's not 1,000 hands. Come on. Everyone knows Steve Jobs, right? Thank you, thank you. Who does not know Steve Jobs? That's easier. Okay, no hand went up. So he said this, innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. Sounds inspirational. Honestly, I don't know what that means. But it sounds somehow vaguely inspirational, but I don't know what it means. How many people here know Thomas Edison? The American inventor. I don't know how famous he is here, but in the United States, everyone knows Thomas Edison invented something like 1,000 products, I think. But he said this as he was innovating. And the problem with innovation is you're doing things that are unknown, yes? So there's risk of failure. And his observation here is important, and it's important to us in terms of our attitude that we bring every day when we approach innovation. He said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Now, I think that's useful, actually. That starts to take us down a path of thinking about innovation in a useful way, I think. So more on this question of innovation. This is, who knows what this is? So it's hard to engage with 1,000 people, but I'm going to try. So this is an Ipod. As Jim showed earlier, this is where Steve Jobs said to put 1,000 tunes in everyone's pocket or something. So this is the first Ipod, I think 2001. That's just really recent. It's amazing. This is already an old product, but it was a huge innovation. But what's interesting is where these innovations, if we think of these fascinating, fabulous products as the innovation, right? That's what comes at us. But every great innovation, big innovation, is preceded by many small incremental innovations. So everyone knew the iPod. Who knows what this is? No one, no one. Someone here must know what this is. One hand over there. Yell it out. So everyone, many of you know the Apple II computer, right? It came out, and did you ever wonder what was the Apple I? You never saw it. This is it. This is the Apple I. So without the Apple I, there would be no Apple II, there would be no Macintosh, there would be no iPod, no iPhone, no iPad, none of that. Looks very crude, doesn't it? This then was a 1955 Sony transistor radio. Looks almost like an iPod, doesn't it? It also gave music for everyone to put in their pocket for the first time. Great, tremendous innovation. It was built upon this innovation, which is the first transistor that was invented just 7 years before the Sony transistor radio. Now, the inventors of the transistor really had no ideas of what to do with it. They were trying to invent something else. They invented the transistor. Other people figured out what to do with that transistor. That's the way innovation sometimes happens. That's the way science sometimes happens. How many of you know this product? How many of you have ever watched an American Western movie? So this is known as the gun that tamed the Wild West. It's the Colt 45. It was an important, hugely important innovation 150 years ago, something like that. But the real innovation was this. Do you see what's happening there? That's interchangeable parts. Interchangeable parts is what actually enabled the assembly line. It enabled flow production to occur. Without interchangeable parts, we don't have any of that. And that's what enabled the Colt 45. That's one of the first products, arguably the first, that had interchangeable parts. Okay, so that was the real innovation here, not the Colt 45 itself. That was easy. But actually, you can't make interchangeable parts without what? Without a lot of innovation around machining. This is a British simple milling machine from 1818 that was then taken to the United States, where in the Northeast United States that was perfected. So by the mid-1800s, the world's best precision machining was in the Northeast US. That enabled them to make interchangeable parts, which enabled the Colt 45. So every innovation that we see is preceded by a lot of hard work execution. Now everyone here knows what this is. This is a look at a Toyota or Toyota-inspired assembly line, where you can see the vehicle moving along. You see that there's a cycle that's taking about 60 seconds. That's the takt time or the cycle time. You see the andon above there. You see the rope with a worker who's in trouble pulling that rope, calling a team leader. A tremendous innovation, a social technical innovation, a combination of many technical improvements and social improvements at the same time, but also built upon many, many small improvements that had occurred before, including Henry Ford's famous assembly line, and including this. This is a photograph taken here in São Paulo, São Bernardo, the Toyota plant, where you see the little hash marks that divide up the long station. That innovation actually occurred here, not Toyota in Japan. It occurred here at this factory because their flow was so slow, because the takt time was slow, because the sales rate was slow. They needed a way to be able to see the pace better, so they added these little hash marks. That was done here. Many incremental innovations adding up to these big innovations that get all of our attention. Now, back to the connection of lean and innovation. This shows the way we, at the Lean Enterprise Institute, the Lean Institute Brazil, all the Lean Global Network, think about enterprise transformation. Everyone is here because you want to change your organization, your company, your work team, your department, yourself. So we have learned over the years that Lean Enterprise Transformation can best be understood as innovation on 5 dimensions. To change your organizations to a lean enterprise, you must address these 5 dimensions, not 6, not 4. You must address these 5. So innovation doesn't mean just the product, just the iPod. Lean innovation means looking at everything, the social side, the technical side, the organizational side, everything. But it comes down to these 5 dimensions. It means thinking about our purpose, which Jim talked about. It means thinking about how we actually do the work. It means thinking about how we develop the people who do the work. It means thinking about the leadership role and the management system that we have in place. It means not just thinking about those, it means doing something about those. It means innovating about each of those things. And underlying all of those things, what we'll always find is there's some basic thinking. As you've gotten involved in Lean, I don't know, out of 1,000 people, I know we have people here who have probably just begun their Lean journey this month. And I know we have people who have been doing this for decades, who have more experience than I do. What we'll always find, if you're a novice or an expert, is that underlying the changes and the way we try to work differently is some thinking. There's a different thinking that we bring to our work moment to moment. And that is also something we need to understand and address in order to have a complete Lean transformation. Now, what that thinking entails also comprises this concept of innovation. So the building blocks for continuous innovation are indeed these 5 dimensions which we must address for Lean transformation. Now, this is a slide that takes those into a little more detail. So I've broken a rule here. I don't know, is breaking a rule always an innovation? Maybe not, but I wanted to do this. I thought it was important. Not only are there too many words, they're English words. So we'll stay here just for a moment because I want to take you through this because it's innovating on these dimensions that is the essence of Lean and Lean transformation. These are questions that I hope would be useful for you to go back and ask yourself, are we addressing these things or not? First, have you made the purpose or the mission clear to everyone? Does everyone know their value to create, their problem to solve? You can think about that in terms of your entire organization or your team, or for that matter, yourself. Have you defined the work to be done? Just a vision or a mission without knowing the work to be done is going to take us nowhere. And is that work being improved? Third, do you have the necessary capabilities to do the work? It's fine to have some wonderful designs, as Ford did when they began their transformation about 8 years ago. But can we execute that? Can we do that? Do we have the right capabilities? And then how are we going about developing the people who do the work? Have these things been addressed? Then we can address these important questions that everyone loves. Everyone loves nowadays to talk about leadership. Everyone loves to talk about innovation and about leadership. And they're very sexy topics and everything. But unless we break them down into something that's useful, I find it simply frustrating to stay at that level. So yes, leadership is important. But leadership, divorced of thinking about these things, is simply an abstract conversation that does us no good. Once we know how we need to develop people, what capabilities are required in order to do the work, to accomplish the mission, now we can think about the required leadership behaviors. Now we can think about the management system that we need. And we can address those questions in a practical way, in a specific way. And then finally, again, this most difficult question, do we understand our current basic thinking, the mindsets of everyone in the room, the underlying assumptions that drive our behavior? Do we understand those things and grasp the impact on our organization and its culture? And then do we think about and determine what we're going to do about that to change that? So, again, our hypothesis at all the Lean Global Network affiliates is that these are the 5 dimensions which must be addressed for Lean transformation. If you address these, you will successfully move forward to a Lean organization. If you don't, you won't. So it's very clear. So, from there, to think a little bit about the impact of all that on individuals, on work teams. Lean thinking, doing any work, whether it's innovation or any other work, it entails, I'm going to say, these 2 things. We need to engage everyone in problem finding and continuous experimentation. First. Secondly, for that to work, we have to give everyone permission to fail. Remember Thomas Edison's words? He didn't fail 10,000 times. He learned 10,000 things that don't work. Give everyone permission to fail. but ability to succeed. Just permission to fail, and then you fail all the time, that's just going to be frustrating. We need the ability for everyone to succeed. Let's say all 1,000 of us work together. I need to find a way to give all 1,000 of you the ability to succeed every day and to know you're succeeding, but also permission to fail so you can try things. Okay? So let's explore that a little further. It relates to these issues of innovation and ownership, which I think go together. Getting people to innovate, we suggest, means getting them to think and to take ownership, right? For someone to innovate around something, they need to feel the ownership for it, to get their passion around what it is, the problems with it, how it can be better, and to be thinking. It gets back into that issue of what is our basic thinking, right? So let's think about how do we get people to think and to take ownership. If you buy the first statement, getting people to innovate means getting them to think and take ownership, then how do we get people to think and take ownership? It relates to some things we do and some things we should probably not do. Most of us, to get where we are in our organizations as time goes by and we rise up in organizations, we get promoted and in higher positions because we have solutions. We have good solutions. We're praised for having solutions. We get promotions, raises, bonuses for having solutions, having a better solution than the person next to me. Okay, but what does that attitude of thinking around solutions mean to an attitude towards experimentation, toward learning? 30 years ago, this year, actually, this is 2014, so a little over 30 years ago, I joined Toyota in Japan, and when I joined them in 1983, they were embarking upon a journey with a lot of risk and a lot of unknown, and that was to take their system and try to transplant it outside of Japan. It's the first time they had done that on a full system level before. So one of their strengths was they knew their weaknesses, and they knew that they didn't know how to do that. They knew they had created something that worked very well in the confines of Toyota City, Japan. They knew it would work there. They knew it was a social and a technical system. They were not confident they could make it work in the United States. So they agreed with General Motors on a project in California to have a 50-50 joint venture. And then, to help them in Toyota City, they decided to hire one American. That happened to be me. So it was me and 70,000 Japanese thinking about how to transfer this overseas. So they hired me, but I had no solutions. Having said that, being a young American, I thought I had a lot of solutions. So they would ask me questions about what to do, and you know what I would do? As a smart young American, I would give them an answer. And it was often wrong. But almost never was I given solutions in my 5 years there in Toyota City. But I was not free to just do what I wanted to. It was a very curious situation for me. It took me several years to even notice it was happening, to start thinking about it, to understand this. I'm not being given solutions, told exactly what to do, but I'm not free to just do what I want. There are structures in place. There are things in place. What's going on here? Here's what was happening. I was being given standard processes and clear responsibility to propose solutions to problems that I owned. Now, my mentors, my bosses, were going to do everything they could, not to take away that ownership, but to do what? To make me think. To give me the attitude of I'm going to try to experiment my way toward learning. I think there's some insight there that we can use as we think about this issue of innovation. Now, everyone knows that lean is often associated with being able to execute well, right? A lot of standards in place. Well, many people often also think that standards are the enemy of creativity, of innovation, that they're opposed. Let's take a look at that issue, because I think that needs to be addressed as we think about the basic thinking that we bring to lean and to lean innovation. So many people believe that standardization is the enemy of creativity. I think you've seen this before. But most successful artists and other creators know that that's not the case. It's usually those who are doing work that's not necessarily so creative that do that. Creative people know that that's not the case at all. Standardization can support creativity. By the way, these two paintings here, the reason they're there is one of them is by is the Japanese woodblock print. The other one is by Van Gogh. Which do you think came first? Doesn't matter. We learn from each other. So creativity entails proficiency in using standard tools, in almost any case that I could think about, anyway. Picasso is often thought of by many of us who are novices in art, modern art, see Picasso and we think, oh, my child could draw that. Actually, he was an incredibly proficient, expert drawer. It was proficiency in basic drawing skills that enabled him to experiment with dozens of apparently poorly drawn artistic styles. Lego blocks. Standard Lego blocks let children quickly assemble new creations. There's a wonderful workshop and learning process that Lego has developed called Lego Serious Play for adults and companies to play with Legos to creatively develop solutions to very complex organizational problems. It's a wonderful process. Standard musical forms let Beethoven quickly assemble symphonies. Everyone knows the famous story that Beethoven, he was still writing symphonies when he was deaf. Well, why could he do? He could only do that because he had standard tools to work with. It's precisely why he could do with that. So the standardization isn't working against these creative artists, it's helping. You may not know, how many people here know Shakespeare? I don't know. Well, he's very famous for having written the greatest plays in English, but also many plays. And many times he would write a play in less than a week. How could he do that? It was standard forms. It's called the 5-act play and what's something called blank verse that supported him in creating the greatest plays ever written in English. He could write them quickly because they were all kind of the same. They had the same structure. Well, as we do work in Lean, it's standard communication forms, the A3 report, the trade-off curve, which Jim will talk about probably in his breakout session, enable people to quickly and accurately communicate with each other. Communication we always acknowledge is an important thing. Well, how about having a standard process to support that? Standardized interaction rhythms. Rhythm is what enables an orchestra to blend their efforts into a coherent whole. The same thing can happen as we work in product development and work in developing anything new in our companies. Rhythms of work, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, can enable us to spend time creating rather than trying to find each other or responding to interruptions. And there's something that some people in Brazil know called jiu-jitsu. I don't know. Who here has heard of Royce Gracie? Anyone? I don't know. Okay, I kind of thought. When you face great uncertainty and unpredictability, therefore all the more reason you want to standardize everything you can. In the face of talented and unpredictable opponents, you want to have standard techniques. You want to learn those and master those deeply. Therefore, they'll standardize and discipline everything they can so they can think about how to win, not about, for example, things of what to wear. How many of you have heard of Jack White? He's arguably maybe one of the most creative American rock musicians nowadays. And he makes this very interesting observation. That's him on the Simpsons cartoon show. That there's more creativity with less opportunity. We don't usually think of it that way. But this is a wild musician, does crazy things, who's saying this. This isn't a Toyota engineer saying this. How many of you have heard of Sonny Rollins? If you don't like American rock music, you might like jazz. Sonny Rollins is one of my favorites. He's a saxophone player. And what he says, the way he learns to innovate is he copies first, then he'll assimilate, make it his own, then he can feel free and be free to innovate. Now, this is something I borrowed from Masaaki Imai, who wrote the book Gemba Kaizen many years ago. And I think you've seen some version of this over time. What you see is essentially a kind of a matrix where you see the roles of people from senior executive, middle management, frontline supervision, value-creating workers, and how their role in terms of emphasis will change from maintenance, trying to make things work as they should, doing Kaizen, and everyone here, everyone in Lean learns about Kaizen, and then also innovation. And sometimes the word in Japanese that's used for that is a kaikaku. But we want to be working on all of these, not just the maintenance part, not just the Kaizen part per se, all of these. So I think what we can do is actually start to blur the lines. We think of innovation as something there, something that other people, creative people do, the designers do. It's actually something everyone can be involved in different ways. So this relationship between maintaining operations so things work, so we really can ship today at 4 o'clock, so they really can do the surgery properly when someone comes in for heart surgery, so that we can actually design the parts so they fit together properly. Doing those things stable in a stable manner, then being able to steadily improve those through Kaizen and innovate. We need to blur the lines between those, I think. Perhaps they're not so distinct as we sometimes think. So the hypothesis, the proposal that we have for you today is that the fundamental skill that we need to learn for all of this, innovation and to make lean work, to make our companies work, is problem solving. So I think there's a way we can think about building skills for problem solving that also can make us powerful innovators as individuals and as organizations. What you see here are 4 levels of problem solving. From reactive, something goes wrong, I have to go fix it, to root cause, where we're going to understand the root cause so it doesn't happen again, to targeted, so I develop a target condition that I'll work toward, and then emergent problem solving, and that's where a lot of unpredictable, sometimes, innovation can occur. What people like to do is, even though they haven't mastered the skills of root cause problem solving, they're trapped in a reactive firefighting mode. They want to jump over to innovation, the innovation that will solve all our problems. But when you try to make that leap without strong Kaizen and problem-solving capability, you're exposing yourself to very simple risk. You may occasionally get an innovation, but you will often fail, and fail in ways that are not going to support the organization. So, with reactive firefighting, you will get random innovation. Occasionally, you'll do something that just happens to be an amazing out-of-the-box success. But it's going to be very random, it's going to be rare. If we can tackle root cause problem solving, we're not going to have a lot of innovation there, but that's required to build the stability in our organizations so we can execute. Targeted problem solving, that's where we define a very clear target condition. For example, with value stream maps, we might define the future state, and then we're going to work towards achieving that future state in a defined time frame. That's where a skill and mindset is established to sustainably execute continuous improvement. Then finally, we have this area I'm calling here emergent problem solving, which is a bit different. That is the world of innovation, exploratory discovery. I use the word here of high science. What that means is sometimes you're trying to invent one thing, and what happens, you invent something else. And if you look at the history of inventions, you'll often find that was the case. I was trying to invent this, and here's something totally unexpected occurred. Or you can relate to this also to Edison's words, 10,000 ways that don't work. We can be trying things, but what we want to do is recognize that the foundation is there in the middle. And honestly, this is where companies I see today still struggle. So after many years of the Lean Institute, Brazil has been here since 1998, LEI in the US, 1997. If we can look at what progress we made over the years, one thing that still lacks is this basic problem-solving capability. So I urge, I implore, I beg you all to take this seriously. You absolutely should be able to do the root cause problem solving. Any company, lean or not, should do that. It's basic, it's common sense, if you will. But most companies aren't so strong there. And very few companies can do this other piece. There's a difference that I'm not going into in detail here, but you need to, I ask you to explore this. Targeted condition problem solving, where you design the way you think should be, then you run experiments to steadily remove the barriers and to learn so you can get there. So go to that emergent problem solving with caution. Don't let yourself get stuck in reactive firefighting, but don't try to just leap from that to emergent innovation. Master those foundational skills, root cause problem solving, and a targeted problem solving as well. And there are processes that we have in the lean world to help us with this. There's an actual process for innovation. Jim Morgan briefly mentioned it this morning, and he's going to cover it more, I believe, in his breakout session. The conventional way we went about innovating or developing products is we would come up with some specifications. The product should be this big, it should weigh this amount, it should have this much strength. And then we'd have some concepts of how that can be achieved. And then we pick one, and then we try to then put that in place. And when we build prototypes, we develop the entire product all the way out, do the detailed design, and then we find what? It doesn't work. We have to go all the way back then, and we have this long iteration cycle. So this has defined many industries and product development in many industries over the years. And then we repeat the same thing for the production system. Set-based innovation is a radically different approach, where we will focus intensely on the user, the market needs. We'll get a target range of specifications. We'll define some space that we can work in. And then we will develop alternatives based on having defined that space, and we will test those to failure. The word failure comes up again. We'll test to failure. Then we've really learned what works and what doesn't, and why some things don't work. So we'll aggressively evaluate those alternatives. We'll converge the specifications and solution sets. Then we can deploy the operational value stream. So this is something, again, I would invite you to learn more about. It is in the book Lean Product and Process Development, and Jim will talk about it in his breakout session as well. So these all come around to understanding the essence of lean thinking, which can boil down to these two things. There's a principle of respect for people and a practice of continuous improvement. We need those two things together, not just one or the other. And they entail this different mindset that we've been talking about since throughout my talk here, of implementation versus experimentation. An implementation mindset is one where I will look for solutions that I will want to put in place. Again, going back to my experience in Toyota City, that is precisely not what I was given. I was given problems for me to explore, to understand, to experiment with, and then propose solutions. So the different mindsets of implementation versus experimentation is something also I would invite you to reflect upon as you go back to your companies. That's why the transformation model that we propose is built around questions. These are questions to explore, not solutions for you to copy. Questions for you to explore so you can understand your own design space in your own company. Every single transformation, from Ford Motor Company to Toyota's years ago, to any company, to your company, they're all going to be a bit different. They're all situational. But situational doesn't mean just ad hoc. It doesn't mean just doing what you want. Remember my situation. I wasn't given solutions, but I wasn't free to just do what I wanted to. It's not ad hoc. So there are principles, there are structures, and there are questions that we can use to guide us, to guide ourselves. Beginning with defining our purpose, that will give us a situational problem that we need to address. We need to climb that mountain. We want to go here for dinner. We want to have dinner this afternoon with my family. That's a decision to make, right? There's a purpose behind that decision. We're all hungry. Or it may be a celebration. Oh, it may be a family member is going to come for a reunion. That's going to drive me to a different decision. There's a different purpose. There's a different situational problem to address. Even going to dinner. Or to climbing a hill. Why that hill? And if I'm going to climb that hill, what skills do I need? That gets into how to improve the work. What's the work to be done to climb that hill, to climb that mountain, to develop that car? What's the work to be done? Until we know the work to be done, we can't possibly have any possibility for success. So before jumping ahead to thinking about other things, do we know the work to be done to solve the problem at hand? Then we can address with specificity the kind of skills that are needed to climb that hill. It's very different to climb up Sugarloaf than it is from the Smoky Mountains in the United States. Radically different set of skills are required. That is going to define the skills I need to make sure are developed in the people that I am working with. And I want them not only to be able to do that job, but to improve that job as well every time they do it. That then leads me to the fourth question of what kind of leadership behaviors are required. That's going to determine whether or not I want to have the servant leader model or the old command and control. So instead of, for ideological reasons, to say command and control is bad, no, there are specific reasons that it's bad. It leads to a different way of developing people and accomplishing the work to achieve the purpose. Now I can be specific in what kind of leadership behaviors I want, what kind of management system we need to have in place. Then we have that always remaining very difficult question of what is our underlying basic thinking that drives our behavior from moment to moment, from day to day. This model then leads to an experimentation mindset, experimentation approach. Lean is, in fact, innovation on those 5 dimensions, not just product, innovation on those 5 dimensions. Product then being the embodiment of how we think about the customer, because lean does begin with value, right? So again, all these concepts relate. in very clear and simple ways. So innovation, we looked at Steve Jobs, Thomas Edison. Not failed, just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Because when we experiment, you know what's going to happen is we're going to fail. Failure is only a true failure when what? When we don't learn from it. When we don't validate that learning in a way that it can be useful. We turn that into usable knowledge. And we can see this in every aspect of life. If I'm at Ford Motor Company, a massive, historic company, changing its entire product development system, such a massive change. Or, Edison's words here on top, negative results are just what I want. Look at the different mindset there from what we usually have. I don't want negative results, I want positive results. I want to prove that my idea works. He's saying, I want negative results. They're just as valuable to me as positive results. I can never find the thing that does the job best until I find the ones that don't. I think that's the same thing as Royce Gracie is saying here. The losses are good if you learn something. So let's all be sure to learn something. Thank you.